Hello everyone, you're watching the channel Stories of Our Life. Friends, make yourselves comfortable. I wish you to truly enjoy listening to this life story.
As soon as the door slammed behind the master, everyone went to work. It was quiet for 3 days. Then the fighting with Sandra began. I can't eat what you cook. How many times have I asked for less butter? I didn't put it in at all this time, she excused herself. Don't cross me. I'll fire you, and you'll be in the canteen cooking for the workers. You tell me what to cook, I'll try it for you. You'll try it? For the kind of money you get, you ought to cook like God. No one ever complained, Sandra said through tears. Then there was a slight lull. What are you running a rag over the parquet? Are you an idiot? You're ruining it. No, it's a special cloth with a fine pile, and I have a special composition for cleaning parquet. I've worked here for years, so I know how and what to do. Everyone knew that it was useless to open one's mouth to contradict the future mistress. She didn't like that and tried to be obeyed unconditionally. Samuel has dissolved you, dissolved you. I'll fire you all. A month seemed like a year to everyone. When Samuel arrived, there was a letter of resignation from Sandra on his desk in his office. I won't work for you anymore, Samuel. Why? What happened? I found another place, they'll pay me more. All right, what you were promised at the new place, I'll pay more. No. I've made up my mind. When Samuel didn't see the portrait of his wife, he almost got tetanus. Where's Loretta? He shouted. Where's what? What's the matter with you, Samuel? I mean the portrait. Oh, so yesterday Camilla ordered it taken down and taken to the basement. Why? How do we know? You said to follow all her orders. I should have turned off the video cameras. And I turned it on, said the gardener. How did you manage that? Well, I was helping the guys when they were mounting everything. Really, I didn't turn it on right away, but after Camilla hit the housekeeper. He hung the portrait up and apologized to his wife, then turned on the horror movie, so the gardener called it. He watched and couldn't believe his eyes. No, it can't be. This is not his Camilla. What is she doing? What did the portrait of his wife interfere with her? When she returned from work and saw Samuel, whom she wasn't expecting until 3 days later, she was frightened for some reason. Kitten, you're here so early, did it go all right? With a sideways glance she saw his wife's portrait hanging in the same spot again. Good for you for putting it up, because your employees do what they want. I want to show you an interesting movie. Kitten, what is it? Something interesting? I don't know, see it first. And don't call me kitten, I already asked for it. After watching the tape, she quietly stood up. I'll go pack, I guess. Good decision. As she left, Samuel didn't see her. She called him a few more times, but he didn't pick up, and then blacklisted her. That's how the Davis method worked. He only now realized how different he and she were, like day and night, like ice and flame. He had had no one after Loretta for too long. And now Camilla. A young, beautiful woman, but nothing like his wife. It seemed to him that Camilla would bring him back to life, bring him back to him. Make him remember how beautiful it was to belong to a loving woman. A woman who with one look makes him forget everything and be happy. But it did not happen. He wanted nothing now, he was ashamed in front of his wife and son for letting a terrible man into his house and into his heart. Fiona met Samuel at the mall. Hello, Fiona. Good to see you. Likewise, the woman smiled. Are you in a hurry? Maybe a cup of coffee, long time no see. Oh, come on. Samuel began to speak unexpectedly. It only seemed so easy for him at first glance. 6 months of life had gone down the drain and it was hard on his soul. We broke up with Camilla, after all. Fiona almost choked on her hot coffee. Samuel was silent, and Fiona took her time and waited patiently for the revelation. Samuel, I can see in your eyes that you are infinitely lonely. I know how it feels. If you want to talk, I'll listen. Just don't try to look stoic, no one needs that. Stupid, isn't it? The hell with it. I'll tell you, maybe the truth will make it easier. After listening to Samuel's story, Fiona wondered about Davis's method. Where did it come from, such a method? It's my grandfather Davis's method. That's how they tested my mother, and she passed with flying colors. And I did the same thing on my father's advice. But bummer. Didn't pass the Camilla power test. How did she take it? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore. I hope you'll still be happy. I sincerely wish you find your soulmate, Fiona said sincerely. I hope you will. Life is too short to waste it on someone who only wants money. Then they ordered another cup, and when they looked at their watches, they both jumped up and said, "Goodbye." Looking out the car window at the evening city, she could hardly believe this could have happened to Samuel. Always cautious, even distrustful, he must have fallen in love like a teenager. From all she had heard, Fiona drew one conclusion that she thought was correct. Carolyn does not need to know about it. Let her live her life, or she's just ready to dissolve into Samuel. It won't do any good. Edward no longer asked Lynn to live together, but he wasn't going to back down either. He decided to change tactics. Indeed, he was paying too little attention to her, his friends were taking up all his free time. Lynn didn't mind, but she didn't trust him much either. She didn't know what a close relationship with a man was like at all. No one had ever touched her, unless, of course, you count Edward. Her entire sexual experience had been limited to a few kisses with him outside the entryway. She didn't want to go any further than that, which made the young man very angry. Now he would meet her after work with flowers, and they would go out for dinner or a walk. Lynn wondered about this change in her relationship with Edward. What's the matter with you? You've become so alert and gentle and affectionate. Does that scare you? More like surprises me, but I like it. He never came without a gift. They were trinkets pleasing to the heart. Sometimes a stuffed toy, then fortune cookies, then a big heart-shaped lollipop. Knowing she sat at the table a lot, he put a foot hammock under the table for her, and once he brought a card with the 3 numbers 520 written in Chinese. Do you know Chinese? Asked Lynn with interest. No, but I know that on the internet the Chinese refer to this phrase with these numbers. 520. The girl repeated, as if she were tasting it. Do you have no idea? No, unfortunately. If you put a dot after the number 5 and connect the 2 and the 0, you get May 20th, the day that is celebrated in China as the Day of Love. So these 3 numbers stand for, I love you. Should I understand that as your recognition? Yes, that's exactly how you should understand it. He pulled her to him and kissed her. Thank you, Edward, for tonight. You surprise me more and more every time. Is that good? I love it. Already lying in bed, she thought she had not responded anything to Edward's confession. But if he had asked, how would she have acted? Lynn was talking to herself again. Perhaps one could fall in love with Edward like that. Yes, I would answer that I love him, too, she thought. Lynn laughed and covered her head. She didn't yet know that feeling when her heart beats and her cheeks blush, so she defined it as love. Carolyn graduated with honors in her 3rd year. She was the best. She called Austin and bragged that she had moved on to her 4th year. And how are you doing? I'm doing fine. I'm seeing a lot better. I'm not a straight-A student like you, but I got through the session without any C's. Well done, Austin. Congratulations. She hadn't been to Austin in a long time. He hadn't invited her or called her since. For fear of getting under the hot hand and getting a portion of not very nice words. But he missed Lynn very much, knew a lot from the internet about where and who she worked. He would have liked to go out with her, invite her to the theater, but he couldn't. He knew she had a friend with whom she had been together for 3 years and was ready to hear the news of her wedding. Austin knew he would be very upset by the news, but as a man, he would definitely congratulate her. He decided for himself that he would not go to the wedding. He would not be able to look at Lynn calmly with a stranger's man by her side. He could not. At moments of such recollection, he wanted to run away from his room, from this house, where everything reminded him of Lynn. He couldn't say anything to his father because he could see him reliving his failed love. Maybe my father and I are monogamous, so we'll never be happy with other women again. Austin reasoned sadly. That evening they walked again for a long time, talked about many things, and ate together all the oriental sweets that Edward gave Lynn. Already saying goodbye. At the doorway, Edward suddenly said, "Lynn, well, I guess it's time." She looked at him suspiciously and suddenly realized she didn't know what he was talking about. "Are you finally ripe for cohabitation?" With those words, all the good things of the evening disappeared like smoke. "Edward, I already told you, I don't want cohabitation. I want a family, I want children, I want to be happy with you, Edward. How come people used to get married without any cohabitation? I want to tell you again, if you expect me to agree to such a proposal, don't waste your time, I won't agree. I thought you loved me, because it's impossible to spend so much time together with someone you don't love." "I do. Don't even doubt it. I've told you before, you're a very smart girl." He turned and pulled her close to him. "And you're not the only one." She raised her head to look him in the eye. "Do you think I could offer that to a woman I didn't love? Never. And I think only an unloved woman could make such a humiliating proposal. Edward, let's take a break from each other. Let's see how much we need each other's company." "But I don't want a break from you," and he stood with his back to the entryway door so Lynn wouldn't leave. "I'm the one who should be offended that you offer not to see each other so easily. So you don't care about me, and you can do without me quite easily," and he pushed away from the door and strode away. "Edward, wait," Lynn shouted, "I like you very much, and I even love you, but don't suggest cohabitation to me again. It sounds disgusting to me." "Cohabitation." She made a grimace, and Edward laughed. "Okay, and you're okay with that," and he pulled out a ring box. "Marry me." "Edward, right away." "Wow, all at once. It will soon be 3 years since we've been going out. I don't even know if there are any places left where we haven't been." "Edward," she hugged him and hugged him tightly, "so, do you really love me?" "Don't even doubt it. I do. Very much. You're something special, and only an idiot wouldn't love you. And I don't think of myself as such. But I don't know your family, and you don't know mine. That's important to me, too. I may seem old-fashioned, but don't be offended, I was brought up that way. You know half my family, the main one is dear Wilmer, the other is dear Edward, yours truly, and 2 more dear and my mother Margaret, and the youngest, my brother Serge, you'll know next Sunday. Okay, and next weekend let's go to my parents' house. They are simple people, hardworking and honest, you won't be scared." "Well, you're not going to leave me at their mercy, are you?" "I won't," Lynn said. They stood outside the driveway for a long time. They had a lot to talk about, but my aunt called home. "Lynn, I think the whole house already knows that Edward proposed to you. Either say goodbye, or come upstairs, stop this outrage." He took her in his arms again, their lips met, and they forgot everything Fiona had told them. Only then did they disperse to think alone about what changes await them in the future. "What kind of habit is it to decide serious matters around the entryway?" Fiona resented. "Is it nice to have the whole house turned into one big ear?" Lynn was so happy that she hugged her aunt and spun her around. "Look how cute it is," she showed off the pretty ring on her finger. "He loves me, you know." "Of course I do," Fiona patted her niece on the back. "I'm happy for you, if you'll be happy with him." "Of course I will, and do you think it will be any different?" "Don't scare me. You know, I'm reminded of a parable I read somewhere. Once upon a time a boy decided to outsmart a wise man. He caught a butterfly in his palms and decided to ask him if the butterfly was alive. If the wise man says yes, the boy squeezes his hands and the butterfly dies. If he said no, he would open them and the butterfly would fly away. When he went to the sage and asked if the butterfly was alive, the sage replied, "Everything is in your hands." So, no matter what I think, everything is in your hands. Build your happiness. I am always there for you. Lynn could not sleep. She smiled in the dark, looking up at the stars, enjoying the beautiful night. Soon she would belong to Edward and a new family would be born. She pictured herself in a white dress and her groom in a white suit. This is going to be the most beautiful wedding, was the last thing Lynn thought before she fell asleep. Lynn prepared carefully for her introduction to Edward's family. She thought about her outfit and consulted with Fiona about a gift for her future mother-in-law. "It's hard with a gift," Fiona said. "I wish I knew what she was into." "Didn't Edward say anything to you?" Somehow he mentioned that Margaret had flooded the whole house with flowers and that they themselves would soon have no place to live. "Well, let's add another flower to that collection. I don't think it will take up much space, but it would be nice to have an original planter to go with it. I'll go to the flower store." "No, Lynn, I have a woman who works there. She has a private collection of violets. She's been fond of them all her life. That's where we're sure to find an exclusive. Her collection is one of the first in the country. That's it. And you look at the cachet." When Lynn saw this collection, she didn't know what to say. There were so many flowers that it was hard to choose from the splendor. "Can I show you one flower? Very pretty," the girl said cheerfully. "Here is my regal person order of Malta. I only speak to her in you. Do you like it?" She turned to Lynn. "I like it very much." Fiona took out a bill and put it on the table. No, girls, it's a little cheaper than that." But the guests were already leaving, holding the beautiful violet in their hands like a fragile vase. They did not think long about the gift for the father-in-law. They bought a good cognac in a beautiful package and settled there. The gifts really surprised Edward's mother. "My God, what a violet! What's the occasion for such expensive gifts?" But there was silence in response. When the gifts were given, everyone sat down at the table. Edward's phone rang at the most inopportune moment. "What kind of habit is it to come to the table with a telephone?" Margaret said indignantly. "I understand, of course, that this is the norm of life nowadays. But can we do without it at dinner?" Lynn had known Wilmer for a long time, so she expected only questions from Edward's mother. For some reason she didn't ask anything, blabbing something about her flowers and that she was glad to meet Edward's friend. A friend, thought Lynn, strange. Didn't Edward say he proposed to her? She looked at Edward, but he was in a fine mood and had no idea what was going on in the mind of his girlfriend, fiancée, or future wife. And she, smiling, bowing her head to Margaret, said, "Edward gave me a ring and proposed to me," and holding out her hand she showed the gift. The future mother-in-law's face stretched. "What kind of proposal?" "A hand and a heart." "Didn't you, Edward, say anything to your parents? Then why this introduction today? What are you so upset about? Sit down. All in good time. What's on your mind?" uttered Wilmer, looking at his son. "Thinking of getting married. Proposed to Carolyn," she said. "Yes. What's not to understand? That we're hearing about this momentous decision of our sons from a stranger so far?" "The girls are driving him crazy," said Serge, Edward's younger brother, who had remained silent until now. "What girls?" "Think what you're saying," Edward replied angrily. Lynn furrowed her brow, looking at the whole spectacle with horror. She pulled herself together, stood up calmly, took the ring off her hand, and without saying goodbye, walked toward the exit. Edward ran after her, and her parents heard a resounding slap from the hallway. The door slammed and there was dead silence in the apartment. "I warned you," my father began. "Leave this girl alone, she's not for you. She's a diamond in need of a proper setting, but not in your person." "Did I tell you?" "So what? What if I like her?" "It's just that men only want what they have to achieve. And the harder it is, the more expensive it becomes for us. That's your case." Stay away from that girl. Don't get her dirty with your arms, with which you embrace dozens of other women. I haven't hugged anyone in a long time. I only want her. Well, by your breaking up, I don't think she needs you at all anymore. You're my son, and I love you. You have a bright head and you could accomplish a lot in life, but you're promiscuous. Unfortunately, I didn't notice when you went down like that. After school loosened my grip on you, apparently, and he showed a huge fist, and, if his son had been standing next to him, would have punched his nose with it. Get out of my sight and don't touch that girl again. And the girl ran from Edward's house without even seeing where. And only when she felt that her heart was about to jump out, she stopped. After looking around and realizing she was in an unfamiliar neighborhood, she called Fiona. "Aunt Fiona," Carolyn said, sobbing, "I'm lost. What should I do?" "Stay where you are, I'll be right there." Half an hour later, Fiona's car was in front of Carolyn. She had never been so happy to see her aunt by her side. "Get in, you're shaking all over." "How did you find me?" she asked Lynn, stumbling at every letter. "Your phone is on geolocation." "I did it because you didn't know the city at all, and I was always worried about you." She hugged her aunt and lay on her soft, warm shoulder. The shoulder she had set up for her more than once. The girl burst into the apartment first, taking off her clothes as she went. Of course Lynn was lying if she said she didn't care about what happened at Edward's house. She was hurt. Grabbing a garbage bag, she picked up all the gifts from her frustrated fiancé and threw them down the garbage chute. If only it were as easy to throw away the bitterness, the humiliation, and, worst of all, the disappointment from her heart. This she could not yet do. Carolyn stood in the hot rain and wished the water would wash away all the memories that tormented her. Burying her face in her pillow, she lamented that she had met him, fallen in love, and cheated. Edward called several times, but she didn't answer. Fiona awoke at 3 in the morning to a noise in the apartment. When she saw Carolyn picking up the shards of a broken cup from the floor, she put the kettle on and, without asking anything, invited her in for tea. We drank the tea in silence. Fiona did not pry into her niece's soul, understanding that her soul was crying and she needed to be given time. Lynn could hardly bring herself to keep up a conversation about nothing and thanked fate for such an understanding aunt. "Can you imagine?" she began. "Edward didn't tell my parents that he proposed to me. I figured it out from my mother's casual words." "And what does that mean?" asked Fiona, to make her talk and distract her from her tears. "I know I'm a silly and old-fashioned dreamer, but I'm not stupid. He gave me a ring and introduced me to his parents to show he was serious. I'm sure he would have asked me to move in together again." She paused to take a sip of tea and calm down, "and I probably would have said yes, because I believed him. Of course, the world wouldn't have fallen apart, neither me first nor me last, but seeing his satisfied winner's face would have hurt even more." She covered her eyes for a moment, then looked at her aunt and said, "I'm quitting dear tomorrow. I don't want to know anything about anything that has anything to do with Edward. You take your time. You're a part-time student, and you're obligated to work. Finding a new job as a student isn't easy. Maybe you shouldn't act on your emotions. You're acting like a hurt child right now. Give yourself time to think about it. You're worried about me, I understand, but I know for a fact that I can handle it." Fiona looked at Lynn and thought that for all her outward openness, friendliness, kindness, she had a backbone, stubborn, like her father. The capital had hardened her and taught her a lot, letting her know right away back at the train station that she didn't believe in tears. "Have you made up your mind so seriously already?" Carolyn's eyes resembled two prickly and cold icicles. "Yes, I have made up my mind, and I won't change my mind." "Good, then I'll always support you." "I love you so much, Aunt Fiona." "And I love you, Lynn. We'll get through this together. I'll talk to some people I know, maybe we can get you a good place." They went to bed around 5 a.m., but by 7:30 sharp they were both up. Lynn was silent, but it was obvious that her thoughts were working. She even wrinkled her forehead, apparently unwilling to compromise with herself. At precisely 9 o'clock she was at her workplace, writing her resignation letter, going to Wilmer's. Even from a distance she heard Deer scolding someone and asking a perfectly reasonable question as to why exactly he should correct them. Waiting for the end of the conversation, she knocked. "Come in," who's so indecisive in there, saw Lynn cough and didn't know what to say to her. "Good morning, I brought a letter of resignation, please sign it." "Carolyn, what happened yesterday will not affect our working relationship in any way. I have a lot of respect for you as a professional and I really don't want to let you go." "I don't hide it, I'm glad to hear that, but I don't want to work here. I want to quickly forget everything about your son. Believe me, girl, I couldn't dream of a better daughter-in-law for me. You just won't be happy with him. You're different, homely, he hasn't settled down yet, I don't want him messing up your life." "Thanks, but I'm not going to change my mind." "Will you work it off?" "If you make me, I will." "I won't, don't hold it against me." With these words, after signing the application, immediately began to solve the next problems. 2 hours later she was as free as the wind. "Well, that's it," thought the girl and called her aunt. "I quit. Don't you have anything to buy at home? I have plenty of time now. Buy champagne, ice cream and strawberries, we should celebrate your firing." "I love you." Carolyn laughed and walked into the mall. After picking up various goodies, she headed to the register. "Is there a holiday coming up?" she heard a man's voice. It was Samuel. "Hello, Samuel." "Yes, we're celebrating with Fiona to celebrate my termination." "Do you quit?" "Why, if it's no secret?" "I want something more serious. I've grown out of my paralegal pants. It didn't interest me anymore. That's the reason." "Well, that's a good reason. When work isn't satisfying, it's bad." She couldn't refuse his offer to give her a ride home. "How's Austin?" "Not bad. Wears glasses only for lectures, got much better vision. I like studying. It just worries me that he doesn't have a girlfriend." "That's the least of your worries. A guy like that will never be alone, he just hasn't found his soulmate yet." "Do you think so?" "I'm sure. Give him a big hello, have him call sometime." Happy to talk to him, and they parted ways. That night she and her aunt coaxed a bottle of champagne and strawberries, made coffee glacé, and ended the evening by singing, "No need to be sad, all your life ahead of you." The next day, Samuel called in the morning and offered Carolyn a job. "Carolyn," Samuel called, Fiona turned to her niece, "He says he found you a job." "A job? Where and what kind?" "Call him yourself, what's the point of making a mess of the phone?" "Yes, Carolyn, hello. About the job, I can offer you a place in my legal department." Fiona saw Carolyn's gaze fade, "And if you don't want it, my good friend has a law firm. It's been on the market for about 6 years. They need a lawyer who specializes in family law." "I like this one better, Samuel." "Well, that's good. Only right away, as you know, you can't be assigned serious cases. You'll have to gain experience from the venerable lawyers. So think about it, you're going back to being a paralegal. It's going to be a little different here. I can attend trials, if I'm trusted, even speak." "I agree, I like that. Where can I come up?" After writing down the office address and thanking Samuel, she said, "Goodbye. Why did you turn down the job at Samuel's?" "Austin works there, the two of you would have been more interesting." "I don't understand anything about his construction business. I like family law cases, and that's what I want to focus on." "Well, look. Let me give you a ride the first time, and then you can get there on your own." They drove up to a high-rise building of glass and concrete. You had to hold your head up high to see the top floor. Samuel's friend had placed his law firm on the 20th floor. The panoramic elevator rose silently toward the sky, and Carolyn's heart sank. The elevator doors slowly opened. The entire floor was occupied by the firm verdict. The sign, "Alan Richmond Law Office Manager," greeted her in big gold letters. There it was, the door that opened to get a ticket to life. She squared her shoulders as if she were on stage, but today she was no snow maiden. Today Carolyn was clearly going to get that promised spot. She needed it more than ever. The secretary was not present, and she walked straight to the supervisor's door. "Come in," she heard a pleasant baritone, with a kind of velvety timbre. She squinted her eyes. What is he like, her future boss? Her palms were sweating, but she managed to pull herself together and open the door. Alan was busy with paperwork and the girl had time to calm down and examine him. Nothing special. Not handsome, but so confident. For some reason she thought he was a tough man. So, nothing. The tightly shifted cheekbones were covered in dark stubble, which brought a certain elegance to his image. "Excuse me, I have to get my papers right away." Finally, he looked up at her. He was no more than 35 years old, but the look in his dark brown eyes was heavy. Her palms were sweating again, she didn't know where to put her hands. "I'm hearing you," he said, standing up and offering his guest a chair. "I want to work for you as an assistant family law attorney." He looked at her, barely containing a smile. "What makes you think we need one?" "Why, Samuel gave me your coordinates."
Ah.
Samuel. Well, that's another matter entirely. I owe him a lot and his request is almost an order to me. Go to Human Resources and I'll call there. I'll expect you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Can I come in today? Commendable zeal. Today is fine. Evelyn, please come to my office. I'm going to introduce you to the best lawyer and you can learn a lot from her. Catch every word she says and soon I'll be able to speak of you as the best family law attorney. May I come in? The door opened ajar. You must. Here, Evelyn, is your assistant. I'll take care of all your requests instantly. She smiled a pleasant smile, examining Lynn from head to toe. Well, hello there. Let's go get acquainted and work. My pleasure. Thank you, Carolyn said as she was already closing the doors. The phone rang in her bag. Without looking at the display, Carolyn answered it. It was Edward. Carolyn, dear, don't hang up. I can't talk to you. Nothing, Evelyn said good-naturedly. Talk and go to Human Resources and then come back. What do you want? Asked Lynn quickly. I love you, Lynn. I don't love you. Do you understand? And don't call me again. I can't hear you, and after blacklisting her ex, she disconnected her phone, not letting him object. Maybe if I hadn't trusted him so recklessly then, my life would have turned out very differently. What was the use of guessing? Everything that could have happened has already happened, the girl thought as she went. 20 minutes later, she was an employee at the Verdict law firm. Carolyn was happy. I should call Samuel and thank him. Without him, of course, no one would take me. Returning home, she saw Edward in the driveway. Does he still hope to get me back? Then he's just an idiot. Lynn, where did you disappear to? I cleared the day to talk to you today. What generosity, the girl said, rolling her eyes. I wish I was the only one you forgot to ask. Well, wait, don't get mad, I'll explain everything to you. Edward, you're purposely pretending not to understand. The page titled Edward the First read and turned over. I didn't like the story. I don't like books with a bad ending. If it makes you feel better, I will tell you that I was very worried and cried, but once I made the decision to end this farce, I immediately felt better. I'm starting a new life, a new job, and hopefully a new man. That's it, I'm tired, and as she roughly moved him, she stepped into the entryway. What was that now? Edward wondered to himself. Did she leave me? He wanted to laugh, but it didn't work, his face was sad. At the end of the day Lynn called Samuel, wanting to thank him for his help. Thank you so much. I'm very pleased and will try not to let you down. It was a pleasure to help a good man. For a month now, Carolyn had been working at the Verdict law firm. She developed a good working relationship with Evelyn, a terrific woman, smart, professional at her job, with a great sense of humor. As far as work was concerned, she was strict, demanding, but never raised her voice. Carolyn, come with me to the trial tomorrow, get all the papers ready, but so that I have time to check them. All right, I'll do it. Evelyn's first rule is to prepare your defense speech carefully. There's no such thing as detail. Everything is important, not only the professional reputation is at stake, but also the fate of the person. She has always kept this in mind. Her speech aroused attention and interest. She would make the court question the arguments of the prosecution and convince it of her legal position. She practically won every case. This trial was no exception. Carolyn sat spellbound and listened to her mentor. Evelyn, how beautifully you speak. Not one unnecessary word, everything to the point, you're just like an actress. I love it. She looked tired, but satisfied. Another person was helped by a lawyer to get the truth. She drove Lynn to the subway and turned around and drove home. Fiona was beginning to get worried, something was taking a long time today without her niece. The phone was off. She threw a warm scarf over herself and went out onto the balcony, as she thought Carolyn would come sooner. It was quite dark when she saw her walking slowly toward the house. Thank God it's okay, Fiona thought, but she heard Lynn talking to someone in the entryway. Are you with a helper tonight? She turned to Edward. Good evening to you too, love. I'm not your favorite anymore, much less yours. Let me through. Wait, don't hurry. Have I waited 2 hours for nothing? I told you last time, you don't have to come here and wait. You and I have made up our minds. No, you decided, but not me. Don't do that to me. I don't like that. What do you want? Specifically tell me, and I'll be on my way. You know what I want. Fiona became uncomfortable on the balcony, not knowing the right thing to do. No one seemed to be hurting her, just talking, and she decided to wait a little longer. Edward, I want nothing to do with you. And then the other one finally spoke. That's it, Edward, she doesn't want you. She's all right, I guess I can take care of her. Will you do it after me? Edward asked defiantly. Did you sleep with her after all? Said Nick with surprise. Had to work the corkscrew, and they both started laughing. You're such a scumbag, wishful thinking, aren't you? I'm telling the plain truth. Would you like that, Nick? Well, you haven't been squeamish since me. Fiona quickly got dressed, grabbed her phone, and ran downstairs to get Lynn. Come on, beautiful, let's go for a ride in the car. I'll buy you some champagne, and then we'll see how we continue to have fun, and, grabbing her under the arms from both sides, led her to the car. Get your hands off her quickly, shouted Fiona loudly. I'll go to the police tomorrow morning and report the 2 assholes who wanted to rape a girl together, and that's gang rape. One jerk I know well, and she looked at Edward, and the other, and she took a picture. The police will find him quickly. All right, Auntie, said Nick, letting Lynn go, we won't go near her again. Not only will you not go near her, you'll also keep her safe from other idiots. Because if anything happens to her, it means you did it. Do you understand? If there are subpoenas from the police, do not be surprised, I do not throw words to the wind. Let's get out of here. Are you men? You've got a score to settle with a girl who doesn't want a scumbag as a friend. Upstairs in the apartment, Fiona immediately dialed Dear Senior. Wilmer, good evening. Fiona, dear. I am not dear to you. I'm going to the police tomorrow to write a report on your son. He won't leave Lynn alone and threatens her with freaks like himself. I'm going to put him in jail. Of course, it will be difficult for me to fight a famous lawyer like you, but I will try if not to put your son in jail, then to ruin the reputation of you and your idiot. She turned off the phone, not giving Dear any chance to justify herself. She took out a shot glass, poured herself a vodka, and drank it in one fell swoop without flinching. I was afraid for you, my girl. Have some water. She dug into the glass of water, which she couldn't even see because of the tears. I was scared myself, but I tried not to show it. You were good for screaming. If we have to go to court, we'll have witnesses. And Fiona, you should be a criminal lawyer. No, I'd rather be sewing clothes. They talked for a long time, and toward midnight they went to bed. In the meantime, Edward came home a little tipsy. The father was awake and waiting for his son. Edward had no sooner opened his mouth to say good evening when his father's deer came crashing down on him. He flew across the hallway in surprise, hitting the wall and losing his balance for a second. Blood ran from his nose, and his lip was smashed. So if there's a trial, I won't lift a finger to get you out. I won't give you a penny of money. Now you pack your things and go to your apartment and live only on your money. That's it. Girls, we're out of restaurants. Get out of here. Wilmer, he is our son, after all. Shut your mouth, he yelled at Margot, you and I are the ones who raised such a monster. You and I. The door slammed, and there was silence. Margot, give me some heart drops, please. I don't feel well. Fiona wrote the statement after all, just in case, and met her niece from work for a long time. For a long time, Carolyn heard nothing about Edward, and then somehow Fiona told her that he had started drinking. How did you get such details? The niece asked. Dear met your man. He apologized for his son, and then he told me. Well, I don't care about that. The past should be left in the past. That's the only way. He's a grown-up boy who chooses his own path. Our meeting at once was a mistake. He's so not mine, it's hard to imagine anymore, and I'm not his. We clearly weren't made for each other. And anyway, we spend too much time on him, he certainly doesn't deserve it. After the well-known events, life gradually went back to normal, and everyone went back to their own cares. Samuel did not forget to ask his friend how his ward was doing. Alan, how is Carolyn doing? Any progress? Evelyn is very pleased with her, smart girl and works with gusto. But I'm pleased with her, too. Pretty, modest, gentle. Friend. I know you be careful with her. You're already surrounded by women, and she's for your collection? Don't hurt her. Samuel, aren't you in love with her? I'm old for her, unfortunately. And it's fashionable now, by the way. In that sense I am old-fashioned. Near a young and beautiful woman there must be a corresponding man, replied Samuel. Carolyn tried to stay out of sight of her superiors. She thought he was too attentive to her, and she didn't like it. I don't know why you dislike him so much, Evelyn reprimanded her. I think he's a normal man. I agree, spoiled by women's attention, sometimes too flamboyant, but in fact, admit it, smart, educated, successful and, to my taste, handsome. And what charisma. When he speaks in court, all the women cry. Carolyn laughed at Evelyn's words, but stood by her opinion. And still refused when he kindly offered to give her a ride home. When he looked at her, she wanted to button up all her buttons. Undressing with her eyes was one of Richmond's pleasures. It was like flirting, and he enjoyed it, only Carolyn didn't like it very much. The girl was not blind or deaf or stupid, and she understood perfectly well what all these insistent advances, these unambiguous glances and invitations for a ride were about. Her opinion that men like Davis and Richmond needed other women, more elegant, more experienced, to match such intelligent, successful and interesting men, had not changed. She was afraid of appearing plain, unsophisticated, and that frightened her more than anything else. Richmond was her superior, she was her subordinate. And then there were the fresh memories of the awful fiancé. But then she noticed that Alan was no longer so insistent on her attention, and she calmed down. If she had known that Samuel had once again bailed her out, she would have had to call again and thank him for his help. Evelyn, speaking in court, took Lynn with her more and more often. She saw how serious and eager the girl was about her duties, so she let her participate in the trial. It was mostly an opening statement, expressing an agreed position with the defendant on the claim and the order in which the evidence presented was examined. Carolyn was doing quite well, which pleased Evelyn greatly. It was the last year of school. Carolyn was still the best student. She was going for a red diploma, but there was some subjectivity in the judgment of the dean's office that part-time study was not as effective as full-time, and had yet to prove that she was at least as good as a full-time student, and maybe 100 times better, with practical experience under her belt. I'll be alive and well, I'll come to your exams, just let them try to give you a 4. Thank you, I have excellent grades as it is. Summer was about to arrive in the capital, but you could only tell that it was almost June by the calendar. The cold wind and fog gave no hope of warmth anytime soon. Maybe that's better, Carolyn thought, it's not as frustrating to sit at my books. Sunday afternoon was drawing to a close, Lynn was preparing for a decisive battle. Evelyn came in for the last exam. Upon seeing her, Carolyn became more worried than she had been in front of the committee. Carolyn Clark, the secretary announced. We know such a student, the chairman of the committee began to joke, so, did you come for the red diploma? I came for knowledge, and whether to give me a red diploma or a blue one is for you to decide, and she looked at the committee. Evelyn gave her the thumbs up. When there were no questions left on the ticket, the chairman of the committee offered to ask additional questions, but everyone refused, saying that the answers on the ticket were so complete that there was no point in torturing her. Congratulations, Carolyn, you worked very hard. We got a letter from the verdict law firm where they are pleased with you, too. That's commendable. It's been a long time since we've had a student like you. Thank you, and she, all red, ran out of the hall. Facing the window so no one could see her tears, she gave vent to her emotions. Unable to cope with the surge of emotion, she could not believe it was all over. For 5 long years, day after day, she proved to herself and her parents that she had not left her parents' home in the capital for nothing, that they could be proud of her. It only seemed so easy and simple, but in fact she was stretched like a string that at any moment could simply burst. Warm hands rested on her shoulders. She didn't have to look around to know who it was. Evelyn, her favorite lawyer, a smart, beautiful woman, had given her so much knowledge during this time. You did well, Carolyn. You answered so wonderfully, I would say beautifully. She turned to her with teary eyes and a red nose. I wanted to be like you during the trial performance. You did better, you have a great future ahead of you, dear. She hugged this small but so strong-spirited woman. Thank you, it's all your credit. You're exaggerating and you don't even realize how much talent you have in you. Your parents gave it to you. Come on, I'll take you home. You don't have to come to work today. In the evening Fiona congratulated her, her parents called, her sisters shouted into the phone, and later Samuel called. Congratulations to the young up-and-coming lawyer on graduating. You did good, girl. Proud of you. She was biting her lips to keep from crying again when Austin picked up the phone. Lynn, I'm so happy for you. Congratulations on such a triumph. Part-time students rarely, if ever, get a red diploma. In my memory, you're the first. I owe you a gift. Thank you, Austin. I'm so tired. I'm just feeling it now. I imagine. Studying and working is always hard, and studying and working hard is almost impossible. But you did it. Fiona went into the kitchen to get tea and cake, and when she arrived, Lynn was asleep, covered with plaid. Slowly turning off the light and covering her with the blanket, she went to rest, too. Fiona was so worried about her that she had to take her exams with her. And how would she have known all the articles she was going to put the scum she knew in jail? She knew from her niece. In the morning, when she opened her eyes, she didn't grab her books, but thought, how good. God, it feels so good. So good that lying on the couch, you do not want to think, or talk, or move. One wants to be in this wonderful state of happiness and a little idleness. Never had she felt so wonderful. Lynn, are you going to work? Shouted Fiona to her. Yes, I'm getting up. Her aunt drove her to work, because Lynn seemed to her to be somewhat absent-minded and inattentive. There was a huge bouquet of white roses and a greeting card at her desk. Later, Richmond himself came into the office and congratulated her on her excellent graduation. Well, are we past the point for you now? Are you going to start your own firm? Come on, Alan. I still have a lot to learn. Evelyn hasn't told me all her secrets. So if you don't fire me, I want to work for you. I'd be honored, he bowed theatrically. She looked at Evelyn. What am I going to do today? As of today, you'll be working on your own. No, I can't yet. You still can. I'm right beside you. Here's an interesting case for you. Figure out how you're going to line up, and then you and I will discuss it. She squared her shoulders, took a deep breath, and opened the first case of her life. Now that she had nowhere to rush after work, she liked to walk and think. It turns out there are so many beautiful things around, and all the time she was running somewhere, hurrying, and did not see anything around. The promenade she walked along had been renewed, beautiful benches stood in the shade of trees, couples in love were sitting on them and kissing. She gazed at these brave fellows, and when she came to her senses, there was an Austin and a girl standing in front of her. She was holding his hand, and he had his hands in his pockets. Lynn, hi, the young man shouted loudly. Hi. A very different man was standing in front of her. This was no longer the subtle boy who was afraid to let go of her hand, but a man. An interesting, intelligent, tall, well-groomed and handsome young man. The wind played with his dark hair. He wore sunglasses, which suited him very well. I can't see your eyes, the girl said. His gaze, without his glasses, was slightly squinted, making him seem defenseless. Athletic, trim, at least 1.8 meters tall, in jeans that fit him like a model looked great. Lynn tilted her head and admired him. You've changed a lot, Austin. It's been a long time since I've seen you, and I'm amazed at how a man can transform himself. He laughed with his white-toothed smile and said that Lynn had also changed, had become even more beautiful. After these words, the girl started yanking him around and reminding him that they were running late. Can I come over tomorrow night? Sure. We'll buy. Don't buy anything, I'll get it myself. Well, all right. I'll be waiting, and after kissing her on the cheek, they parted. Handsome, the girl thought as she walked away from Austin, it's nice to see such a handsome and well-groomed man, Lynn thought. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd rate his appearance at 15. Who's that? Susan, she graduated with honors from high school and college. She's not the highway type, and she's a hard worker and smart. Well, okay. It's just the way you looked at her, the way you never looked at me, that's what made me twitch. Look, I never promised you anything, and you know that very well. Until today you were fine with everything. What happened today? Nothing happened, and she pulled her hand out. Susan, you need something to do. Hanging around boutiques and beauty salons all day is boring. But I like it. Then go to college, learn the basics of business and open your own beauty salon. And why do I need this headache? My father gives me such a huge amount of money that it would be stupid to work. Your father is a smart man, he raised the business from scratch, and you can do something on your own, without your father? No. You can't do anything. But Lynn can. She's already working as a lawyer. Maybe you've had enough of me. I hope you're kidding now. It takes a relationship for a person to be bored, which you and I don't and can't have. We always have been and always will be girlfriends. Got it? Come on, I'll buy you some ice cream. And this one, Lynn, is yours. Do you like her? You can't not like her. Leave me alone, the girl turned around as she walked. Go catch up with her and kiss her ass. I don't need you. Freak. What a lofty relationship you and I have, remarked Austin and was glad to get away from her. Dad will certainly be unhappy, but it's beyond me to hear about boutiques and beauty salons every night, and he remembered a conversation with his father. Son, she really likes you, go out with her, go to the movies, to a restaurant, maybe something will work out. You are always alone. Institute, work, that's all your joy. Dad, I don't like her. Well, look, pretty girl, well dressed, in love with you, what more do you need? What's important, Dad, is that I like her. I understand Simon is your partner, you want to make him feel good, but please, not on me. He was glad he had met Lynn. What a beauty she's become. There she is, I like her. From the very first time we met. Before I even saw her, I already knew she was beautiful. She's mine, I feel it, and I don't need anyone else. What matters is, does she want me? That's the question. We'll find out tomorrow. I'm not the blind kitten who needed her hand anymore. Austin found his car, and all the way home he thought about what to give Carolyn as a graduation present. Carolyn, for her part, was already home and was telling Fiona about meeting Austin. You know, he's gotten so handsome. He's matured a lot. Oh, you'll fall in love with him. Definitely. You're finally paying attention to him as a man. As she looked at her niece, she saw her face covered with her palms and blushing. What shall we cook? He said not to cook anything. He'll bring everything himself. Well, of course. If women always listened to men, nothing good would happen. So we'll make dinner, and whether it's any use, we'll decide as we go along. Fiona came home early from work, cooked her specialty meat, baked a pie, and made some light salads. Austin rang the doorbell at 7 p.m. sharp. First Lynn saw packages and boxes and flowers, and then a smiling Austin. He took out the gifts he had brought. They sat at the table like a family. Austin acted casual, talked a lot, and made everyone laugh. Fiona thought, I wish Samuel were here. Samuel, hello. Fiona? Hello. Is something wrong? No, I want to invite you to visit us. Austin came to congratulate Lynn on his graduation. She didn't get a chance to finish. You have Austin? I thought he... Well, okay, no thanks, I'm not home, things to do yet. No, okay, sorry to interrupt. Samuel was angry with his son. After all, he had asked him. No, he had decided to do it his own way after all. We'd have to have another talk. His mood dropped, he hoped, as he left. Austin tossed on the way that it would be too late. Samuel thought he was dating Susan after all. Fiona's mood dropped, too. It wasn't enough that Austin was playing a double game yet. It wasn't until late at night, out on the balcony, that the young people were able to have a heart-to-heart talk. Why do I feel like I've known you for 1,000 years? Looking at Lynn, Austin asked. Because I really have. We met during a difficult time for you, the girl replied. Where were you while I was living without you? Leaning her hand to her lips, Austin asked. Close by. I've been around and probably waited all this time for you to become what you are now. And maybe I'll surprise you when I tell you that I'll always be around if you want me to be. I already do, Austin immediately replied. Remembering a parable Fiona had told her, she replied, It's all in your hands. Lynn smiled, the only thing that scares me is that it all happens very quickly. Fast, Austin wondered, I've had a crush on you for 5 years. Don't tell me you haven't noticed anything. I won't, because I did notice something, Carolyn said, flirting under his scrutinizing gaze. But that wasn't the time. Then you took offense at me and didn't call for a long time. And then we were both busy. Yes. I was studying, and you were Edward. At the mention of that name, Lynn flinched. Unable to cope with her emotions, she put her hand on her chest and took a deep breath. Please, never, you hear me, never think of him. Okay, I'll never remember. Followed him on social media, though. He's going through a tough time right now. I'm guilty somewhere, too. Never blame yourself, he objected confidently and emotionally. He's just weak and a coward. He should have at least admitted to himself that he wasn't worthy of you. You were just too good for him and could do without it. He took a long time to choose a word, then waved his hand and added, He's scared that he couldn't do without you. I guess he did, he finished, as if he hammered the last nail in the coffin lid. and they never remembered this woeful hero named Edward again. They stood admiring the city at night for a long time before Fiona reminded them of the time. Austin, it's the second hour of the night, don't try to solve all the problems tonight, you'll still have time. Sorry, really I'm late. I'll be on my way. Will you walk me out? Hearing this, Fiona smiled and thought, where are my 17 years? Standing near the door and saying, goodbye. Austin really wanted to kiss her so Lynn wouldn't see his trembling hands. He hid them in his pocket. I don't know why I lived a long time without you and waited for something. Probably to meet me at the waterfront. She hugged Austin herself, thus giving the young man courage. I love you, Lynn, and, touching her lips gently, he kissed her, see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Lynn, you lie down, I left my papers in the car, I'll go out and get them. Okay, the girl replied. Austin, I called Samuel, I wanted to invite him to visit us and I must have ruined everything. You were supposed to meet Susan or something. Actually, I don't care what her name is. I'm warning you, if you run your game behind your niece's back, you'll be sorry. Fiona, I would never hurt Lynn. I love my father very much. He has done and does a lot for me, but who to love and who to marry will be up to me, and no one is going to lead me astray. I heard you. Let's hope it's said from the heart. Don't even doubt it, the guy smiled and walked away. He drove through the night capital and thought about his upcoming conversation with his father. It was 3 o'clock in the morning when Austin pulled up in front of the house. There were no lights in the windows, no one was waiting for him. That's fine. Mornings are wiser, let my father's resentments subside. But as he walked past Samuel's office, he saw the light. Austin, come see me, his father called out to him. Can't we leave all the questions for tomorrow? It's getting late, the son answered grudgingly. I prefer not to leave things for tomorrow that must be done today. Especially since your tomorrow is already like 3 o'clock. Sit down. Showing all his displeasure, Austin sat down in the chair. I'm all ears. Samuel held out a mock pause, but it didn't make the right impression on his son. After waiting a little longer, as if contemplating his words, he began to speak. Son, I asked you very much to be gentle with Susan, to give her at least a little hope that someday you could be together. Dad, and I asked you not to interfere in my personal affairs. I'm going to decide who I'm going to be with and who I'm going to love. And it certainly won't be Susan. Why, having married my mother for a great love, are you forcing me to be with this fool, an empty-headed woman for whom the main values in life are a label with a famous brand written on it? Why do you love your Simon more than your own son? You're ruining my life. Answer me the question that torments me. Why weren't you gentle with Charlotte and gave her that little hope that someday you could be together? Samuel, of course, understood the sarcasm with which his son asked the question. I couldn't stand her. How I understand you, replied Austin eagerly, because I also can't stand your Susan. I love Lynn, and you know it. I just really like her. It's when you suddenly realize it's yours, the one you've been waiting for your whole life. I fell in love first with her voice, her hands, her character, and only then did I see her herself. And I don't need anyone but her. I realized yesterday that she likes me too, so please leave me alone. There's no point in arguing with me. I want you to accept everything I told you. Can I go to bed now? His father didn't answer anything, and Austin took that as agreement. Samuel had nothing against Lynn. She is a good girl and a better wife for a son would be hard to find. But he and Simon decided to combine their capitals. It would strengthen their position in the growing construction market and force their competitors to respect their interests. But after talking to his son, he realized he had to say goodbye to those plans. His son's question resounded in his head, why do you love Simon more than you love me? That's crazy. How could he not love Austin? He was even a little ashamed right now for pushing Austin. The spasm that came to his throat made him drink a glass of water in a gulp and feel ashamed for forcing his son to deal with his problems. Walking up to Austin, who was still awake and crouching on the edge of the bed, Samuel said, "I thought that if I insisted on my offer, you would suffer and I would worry that I was being dishonest. I should probably be ashamed now of what you thought of me. Father, I love you very much and will always be grateful for what you do for me, but I will live my own way." Carolyn was awake, too. Throwing on her robe, she stepped out onto the balcony. She tried to remember every word Austin said, every gesture he made. She remembered the scent of his perfume, squinted and silently mewed with happiness. The girl thought she was entitled to say that he was hers and she was his, and they were born to be together. Fiona quietly came up behind her and threw a warm plaid over her. "He's nice," the aunt said, as if Lynn was against it, and the aunt coaxed her, "decent, caring, and loves you." "After what date do you think he'll pull me into bed?" asked Lynn. "If you have a real, fulfilling relationship, I think he'll wait until you're ready for it." "I'm embarrassed, but I'm ready." "Well, why should you be embarrassed? It's just that you trust him. He's convinced me that I'm the one, the desired one, the one I love. And I believe in his sincerity and am falling more and more in love. He helped me believe in myself again, after Edward, and I'm grateful to him. But if he cheats on my expectations, I won't survive it." My eyes tingled and tears came to my eyes. "Silly, you haven't even started a relationship yet, and you're already about to end it. Everything is going to be fine. Are we going to sleep tonight, or is it time to get ready for work?" It was 5 o'clock in the morning. "Can we at least get a couple of hours of sleep?" They passed out right away, but they both slept through to work. Fiona allowed herself a day off, and Lynn went out closer to lunch. There was a message waiting for her on her phone. "Good morning. I miss you already." She had no time to answer. She didn't raise her head until the evening. Firstly because she was busy and secondly because she was ashamed, but Evelyn understood and, hiding a smile, said, "It happens." Simon turned out to be quite an adequate man and sided with Austin. "You know, Samuel, you and I will combine our capitals anyway, but we won't break our children over our knees in the process. 20 years ago, I was in the same position as your Austin. Barbara, Susan's mother, was 18, I was a little older. My parents dreamed of marrying us. Neither she nor I was so eager. But we turned out to be more than obedient fellows and allowed the wedding to take place. We lasted exactly 6 months. From there Barbara went for a walk, salons, massages, clubs. I studied and worked, saw my wife only in the evenings, and sometimes I did not see her at all. Susan was born, my father-in-law found a good nanny so that my daughter would not get tired, and when the child turned 5, she came to me and asked me to let her go. Simon, you are still young and will arrange your life, we never loved each other, let me go, she said then. I couldn't say anything to her at all, I left and got drunk, and when I came back, my daughter was meeting me. She left her to me. It wasn't until 5 years later that I found out Susan wasn't my daughter. A case of chance helped, but I won't tell you that, I don't want to. It's not the child's fault that her mother was promiscuous, but it was as if nature had laughed at me and left little Barbara in my house. She doesn't want anything, no schooling, no work, no interests except clothes and salons. Who needs her? Graduated from high school, and that was the end of her life plans, too. Austin is a great guy and I would dream of having a son-in-law like that, but let's not ruin our kids' lives. I, like you, understand the absurdity of our idea. Hearing his friend's story, Samuel was dumbfounded by such a revelation. Anyway, Julia lives with you. Are you married? Julia is a wonderful woman, kind, affectionate, the exact opposite of Barbara. I love her very much, but Susan doesn't accept her. She behaves disgustingly, rude to her, just drives her out of the house. So put her in her place, what are you giving the woman you love a hard time about? That's what I did. I talked to her tough, put conditions on her, and she went to her grandparents to live. Do they know she's not your own daughter?
Yeah.
I told them when they started telling me off that I was kicking my daughter out of the house. So after that news, they haven't called for a week and Susan hasn't shown up. Maybe that's for the best. I think so too. She's a big girl. She can support herself quite well. I'll help, of course, but let her live separately. I also want to have a real family and children, if it works out. Katya is 8 years younger than me and can still be a mother. I was much happier than you, friend, smiled Samuel, loving wife, loving son, but happiness was short-lived. But you found someone you loved. And I still can't. Loretta is beyond competition. Does Austin have a girlfriend? There is, Carolyn. His former nurse. Remember I told you about the girl who brought her son back to life? Yes, I remember. Well, that's her. Lynn graduated with honors, works as a paralegal. It's rare to have so many good qualities in one person: smart, beautiful, kind, and decent. Aren't you in love with her yourself? Samuel didn't answer right away. I'll tell you honestly, it's hard not to fall in love with her, but I could never ruin my son's feelings. I'm a grown man and it's easier for me to deal with feelings. And he's having them for the first time. Let them be happy. Noble, just don't know if it's right, but it's up to you. And Lynn and Austin enjoyed each other's company. He was in a hurry to get a date with the girl. I'm sorry, I still haven't asked what your favorite flowers are, he said, handing her a bouquet of daisies. The ones you give me are my favorite, Lynn replied, burrowing into the middle of the bouquet. They sat opposite each other in the cafe and the girl, looking at Austin, thought that she could not be without this open and handsome young man. And the fear of losing him resonated with strong stabs on her left side. It was probably the kind of gratuitous fear that came over her when she realized that she had something to lose. She was back at the cafe when she felt a shaking on her arm. Lynn, where are you? Where did you run away from me? I'm here, just wondering. I told you I would always be there for you if you wanted me to. I don't want to be around anymore, I want to be together. What does that mean? It means offering to be my wife. I know what you're going to say. I won't. Does that mean yes? Yes. I accept. Only, of course, it won't be tomorrow. I have to meet my parents, prepare for the wedding. It will be my first and last. I understand. Let's start by meeting my parents. Lynn couldn't hide a smile. Okay, let's do that. Arriving home near midnight, Carolyn told Fiona she was getting married. You're crazy, Lynn. You just started dating and you're already married? I'm completely helpless before his charm and assertiveness, and I couldn't say no to him. I love him and I don't want to live without him. Tomorrow you and I are going to meet his parents, and the girls, as if on cue, laughed together. Dad, my fiancé is coming to meet you tonight. Who is she? Asked Samuel with surprise. Lynn. Samuel couldn't hide his surprise. Are you kidding me? Why make a comedy out of a serious matter? Don't Lynn and I know each other? Go with her to her grandparents and introduce them better, and don't me, especially since I'm meeting with a very big customer tonight. And you're sending me to Grandpa's to try out the Davis method on Lynn? I don't think I can use it, but they will look at your fiancé. They are also members of our family, so they have a right to meet the future in-laws. All right, I'll go to my grandfather's, especially since I haven't been to see them in a while. That's right. I'll call them, so they can set the table in time, at least a sweet one. Well, that's it, I'm off to work, and they said, goodbye. So the son decided to get married. Samuel pondered behind the wheel of the car, didn't consult, didn't talk, decided everything himself. Where are they going to live? If he's so independent, he must have seen something, right? And me? And you, Samuel, you'll live alone in a 3-story house? Maybe we should sell the hell out of this house. We built it for our big family, our future kids and grandkids, and now we're left alone like a beggar. What am I whining about? I don't want to feel sorry for myself. He heard the sounds of klaxons. They were different in volume, duration, and melody. It turned out that he was holding up the traffic when he was thinking. "Excuse me a moment," as if he could be heard. The workday swirled with problems, meetings, work calls, and it wasn't until lunchtime that he remembered to call his parents. "Dad, hello. Austin and his fiancée are coming over tonight to introduce you, so to speak, to a future relative. Look at her, talk to her, let you have your own opinion of her. Then you can tell me. And you yourself don't mind them getting married? Who else would ask me? It's up to the kids now." "So you're against this girl?" No. She's a nice girl, yes, you know her a little, she's Austin's former nurse. Caregiver? Couldn't he find anybody else to be his wife? Dad, well, she's a non-professional caregiver, she needed a job while she was getting ready for college. Well, did she get ready?
Yeah.
She graduated with honors, she's working. Well, that's something in her favor. All right, son, let's take a closer look at your future daughter-in-law. Come on, set the table, give her some tea. You tell me what to treat my grandson with. We'll decide for ourselves." To her greatest annoyance, Carolyn found herself unprepared to meet Davis's elders. She had hoped to have a fun evening at the table with Samuel and Fiona. She was expecting more of a show from this introduction, but apparently things were decided there without her. "I don't understand. What are you so worried about? What could happen over a cup of tea? It's not like they're going to kill you. My grandparents are the world's grandparents. And they're bound to like you." All she thought about was how uptight she would feel knowing how strict these people were and how they would take the news that their grandson was getting married. When they pulled up to the house, they were greeted. It was a good thing Austin was holding her hand, or she wouldn't have known where to put those hands, as always. "Hello," Lynn said, "my name is Carolyn, but Austin likes to call me Lynn, I don't mind." She fell silent, and the two looked at her, keeping their eyes on her. "Grandma, why are you holding us at the door, or aren't you glad to see us?" "Yes, of course, please come in," Austin introduced Grandma and Grandpa and said again about Lynn. "Grandma, I have decided to get married and have proposed to Lynn, to which she has said yes." "And how long have you known this girl?" the grandfather asked. 5 years now." "Well, you haven't been dating for 5 years, have you?" Carolyn understood where Grandpa was going with this and shook Austin's hand under the table and began to speak for herself. "You know, of course, the circumstances under which we met. Yes, we have met very little, and if you think I am frivolous, I understand. But I love Austin, so I agreed." "Well, let's have tea," Grandma said, sensing the growing tension. This evening there were interesting conversations around the table, and they could well be called family. Carolyn had no idea that Harold was such an interesting storyteller and that Mary loved to laugh. It did not take long for Carolyn to talk about her family, about her aunt where she lived, about her little sisters, about how she loved her profession. Gracefully, respecting all the ceremonies, the young people drank tea, answered all the questions, and there was no reason to linger any longer in this hospitable home. Saying
Goodbye.
the grandfather said that Austin had good taste and, embracing Lynn, wished her happiness. The table in the living room was festively set. Fiona and Lynn were expected tonight. Samuel had given orders as early as the morning and was now watching to see that they were carried out. The guests arrived without delay. Only now did Samuel notice Fiona. Ever since Nathan was gone, she had lived alone, and she was a beautiful woman and a smart woman. She was growing the business on her own and carrying on her husband's business. "Hello, Fiona. Come in," and he invited everyone to the table. At first there was some tension, everyone was silent, staring at their plates, and Austin diffused the situation. "Lynn, I bought you a ring," and he solemnly put it on her finger, "because I want to live a long life with you. I want children from you, as beautiful as you, so that they grow up to be decent people, and for this you must say again, are you ready to marry me?" She didn't answer right away, but not because she changed her mind, but because she was wiping away her tears, and Samuel looked up at her and waited for an answer, too. "Yes, I agree." I'm the luckiest man alive, said Austin and filled his champagne glasses. Fiona went up to make a toast, but she was distracted by the phone ringing. After a couple of minutes, she came back and said she had to go to work urgently. Something had happened there. How about I go with you, Fiona, suggested Samuel. No, I'll take care of it, the police are already there, and she quickly left. With the three of them left, they chatted nicely, making toasts, until the phone rang again. Who's got that? Asked Lynn. I think it's me. Austin got up to find the phone. Left alone with Samuel, Lynn felt uncomfortable with his gaze. Do you really love Austin? He asked earnestly and faltered when he noticed her eyes go wide and look at him with shock. Do you have reason to doubt it? There is, because I know for a fact that your heart was beating much more often in my presence. She flashed up like a match and, leaning her palms against her face, said, when we are only 17 and we see a handsome, successful and rich man, we think that he is the one and only one and it will be impossible to meet a better one. But this is wrong, my heart could have been shattered, as it usually is at first love. Silly, of course, I was silly. I was like any girl of 17, a dreamer. I thought you were the prince I'd been waiting for. But as life has shown, my feelings were unrequited. Who said that, and who decides if it's right or wrong? I decided we couldn't be a couple, and I feel no remorse about it. You're well into your 40s, but you're still a gorgeous handsome man with a strong character. Any woman would consider it an honor to be near you. Would you consider it an honor? If you had asked me that question 5 years ago, I probably would have answered, yes, and thrown myself at your neck out of happiness. Now I'll answer that it's wrong, my Austin after all. But thank you for not taking advantage of my crush, you acted like a decent man. Now I doubt that very much. They finished their conversation just in time. Austin came up and they had to change the subject. Sitting in his study, Samuel contemplated the frank conversation with Carolyn. He didn't regret asking her those few questions. He understood a lot of things. The difference of 20+ years is enormous. In 10 years she would be a blossoming beautiful woman, and I was closer to 60. A mésalliance, they would say to our backs, and everyone pitied this young woman. Although Carolyn tried to speak calmly, clearly, but I could not be fooled. In her huge beautiful eyes I saw fear and confusion. Fear that her secret was out, and confusion as to whether she had done the right thing. He remembered how his life had changed since Carolyn came along, this kind, gentle girl with such a core inside. I will be happy for my son and help a young family, were the pure impulses and desires Samuel had after much thought. He saw how his son loved Lynn, how she was bathed in that love and attention. His son's words and actions spoke of a great love for this girl. As he left the study, he heard confessions addressed to his fiancée. I don't know why I ever lived without you for so long. There's no one to compare you to. You are so alone, unique. His reaction was unexplainable when he saw the guys kissing. That's right, he thought with a smile, and mentally wished them happiness. She was happy to see her parents, her sisters, Fiona, and, of course, Evelyn at her wedding. The young people didn't want a fancy wedding, with hundreds of strangers, but the right people. It was their wedding, so they invited the people they wanted to see themselves. Austin suggested they do it at the mansion. Carolyn liked the idea. After all, it was her fiancé's native place, it preserved the warmth of family relationships when his mother was alive, many fond memories of childhood, and that is always a pleasant emotion. The wedding dress was sewed, of course, in the house of models. It was a wedding gift from his aunt. On seeing her parents, Carolyn cried and realized that she missed her mother very much. It seemed to her that her mother had grown old, and her father was all gray. Lynn watched as Austin greeted her parents, as her father shook his hand and her mother hugged him, barely reaching his shoulders. Is this handsome man really going to be my husband in a few hours? The bride was talking to herself, it just can't be. But when Austin walked up and boldly pulled her to him, her doubts receded into the background. Very masterly and boldly he showed that she was only his. She, too, wanted to belong only to him to the last cell, to the last breath. It was only a matter of time before this day, so long and exciting, would be over. In the midst of the wedding, Samuel received a call from a security guard. "Samuel, there's a young man here," says a friend of Carolyn's, "wants to congratulate him." "Who is he?" "Edward Dear." A colorful last name. "All right, let him wait, I'll tell Lynn." The bride and groom's dance was over, and now as father-in-law, he approached the young people. "Edward Dear is here to congratulate you, will you come out to him?" She grabbed Austin's hand and looked him in the eye. "What are you so afraid of? Let's go together. Don't be afraid of anything." "Lynn, where are you going?" asked Fiona. "There's Edward coming to congratulate you." "I'll go with you. Maybe he forgot something, so I'll remind you." Hearing these words, Samuel didn't stay away. So the four of them went out to congratulate him. The men were the first to come out. "Where's Lynn?" He had a huge bouquet of white roses in his hands. "Aren't you forgetting something, Edward? Our statement is at the police. I won't do her any harm, I loved her, after all." "Strange love you have had, of course, but since you have come with good thoughts, congratulations," said Fiona, and then he saw her. "You are very beautiful, Lynn. Forgive me for everything and be happy." The bouquet was so huge that Samuel had to pick it up. And the unexpected guest was already driving away from the gate, never looking at the happy couple again. How did he know about the wedding? "I met Dear," said Fiona. "He asked how you were doing, so I told him about your wedding." "Don't worry, it's okay. You've got a lot of protectors out there." "Yes, thank you," Lynn said more cheerfully, looking at her husband, not believing her happiness. The wedding ended well past midnight. The bride was falling off her feet, her lips were swollen from shouting bitter. And her feet were sore from her high heels. The bride and groom were accompanied, but the guests had a long talk about their everyday life. A shy ray of light penetrated through the curtains, and it was clear to see Lynn's hair spread over the pillow, and a slight blush adorned her face. The thin blanket she'd managed to wrap herself in as she rolled onto her other side outlined the smooth curves of her figure. Austin had long been awake and admiring his beautiful wife. "I'm like a fool, lying next to her in this silence and absolutely, infinitely happy. I'm in love. I'm in love. What could be better? Good morning, my husband. Hello, my good one." They were unaccustomed to feeling in a new capacity. After a quick shower, they went downstairs to their guests. "Good morning," Lynn said, now hiding behind her husband. "I didn't get you a present yesterday," Samuel said. "Here are 2 trips to Bali. Your flight leaves tomorrow morning, and I'll take you to the airport." Austin shook his father's hand, and Carolyn walked over to him and, after standing there in confusion for a few seconds, rose on her toes and kissed him on the cheek. "Thank you for the gift. Have a nice rest," said the father. When they returned from their vacation, the young ones wanted to rent an apartment and live separately. When Samuel heard this, he was upset. "Why should you pay money to others? Is there not enough room in the house, or am I in your way?" he asked resentfully. "If you leave, I will sell this house and I will not keep such a staff of servants." "Father, well, at some point we're going to have to start living on our own anyway, deal with some household issues, problems we're going to have, or should we live and hide behind your back?" "You don't have to hide. Just live, solve your own problems, I'm not going to get involved with you." "What do you say, Lynn? Do you agree to stay in the house, or do we go to the apartment after all? Do you want to blame it on me? What do you want to do?" "I'd go to the apartment." His father looked at him resentfully. "Do what you want. But I'm putting the house up for sale." "And where will you live, Samuel?" asked Fiona, who had come to visit them.
Yeah,
"At least I'll move in with you," Samuel said with a laugh. "I'll take you up on that, because I've got a lot of room in my apartment. I wanted to invite the young ones to live with me, but now I won't, now that you're going." "Why?" "I'll take that and come over. I can walk to work from you, too." Lynn and Austin looked at Fiona and wondered. "Are you serious?" asked Lynn. What do you care? You're going to rent an apartment, go ahead. Guys, I think you're in a hurry. Do you really want to throw away that kind of money and feed someone else? Maybe you'll have a baby soon. Do you know how much money that takes? Your father-in-law is not your mother-in-law, he won't interfere with you. Think it over. Otherwise, your father will sell the house and you'll lose the memory of your mother. There's air and space. It's beautiful. Fiona, move in with us, it'll be more fun. Come on, what about my apartment? And we'll move into yours, Carolyn thought to herself, and we'll come over on Friday nights after work. Fiona looked at Samuel, and he said, smiling, I agree. That's the kind of arrangement I like. Move in, Fiona. 6 years with Carolyn, she didn't know how she was going to live alone, she didn't know who to take care of, and Samuel had the same problem. So, the fate of 3 families depended on her decision, and after thinking about it, she agreed. From then on, the boys came to Samuel's house on Fridays, like a sanatorium after a week's work. Everyone was happy. 2 years later, Carolyn and Austin opened their own law office. The guys did well, and 2 years later Carolyn went on maternity leave. The labor was difficult, and 2 beautiful boys were born. It was hard to cope with 2, so the young family moved into Samuel's home. Don't worry about a thing, Fiona assured her, kissing the baby on her chubby cheek, we'll all help. Carolyn was exhausted and dreamed of only one thing, sleep. Now Samuel felt like he had a real family. A wife, children, and grandchildren were happiness. Austin worked for 2 to provide for his family. When the boys were 3, Carolyn became pregnant again and gave birth to a baby girl. The house came alive. Samuel and Fiona rushed home after work to be with their grandchildren. When little Alice turned 1 year old, they announced they were going on vacation. Carolyn had helpers. She didn't do anything else besides children, but these 3 required so much energy and patience that only a fervently loving mother could endure them. Samuel was happy. He held his Fiona tenderly in his arms. He had everything, the life he wanted, the woman who gave it meaning, the children and his future, the grandchildren he adored. He also knew he was the happiest man alive.
An amazing story, isn't it? Thank you for listening till the end. I sincerely hope that you truly enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate this video. See you in the comments and in